Because I love sci-fi and because the pilot episode was included in Amazon Prime to try to draw you into a subscription to AMC, 2022, Moonhaven. So I'll reiterate, I only watched the pilot episode so far, but I'm seriously considering watching the rest of it. Now, Moonhaven reminded me a great deal of The Expanse, but I need to explain, not that it's not nearly as dark, as gritty, at least so far, as The Expanse, but it was similar in this way. Moonhaven has gone out of its way to create a fictional universe and bother to build it out. Even in the language and the way people speak to each other. We have nothing nearly as complex as the Belter dialect, but we do have words that you and I can figure out what they mean, but are used in a sort of futuristic context. Weird abbreviations, words, grats instead of gratitude or thank you, other examples you'll see throughout the episode. The technology is all well worked out so that it has its own visual cues. It looks like it belongs to this universe. It has its own aesthetic. Rather than feeling like other sets from other places suddenly shoved together, it stands out as being, over time, you would definitely be able to learn to say, that is from Moonhaven. Of course, in this day and age, there's always the immediate suspicion of Marxist dialectic. Is it woke? Well, sort of. Like The Expanse before it, there's a great deal of, well, it's so working to check all of the boxes of representation that it ends up not looking like the world we live in, though they will always allege the opposite. There's an artificial sense of just how feminine it is, how gender heavy the cast is, how race heavy the cast is. But be that as it may, it's the future. And if you project this out to the future and that's how you see the future, then the key is, do they behave like it's the future? And they do. Moonhaven has all of that sort of diversity, inclusion thing that we talk about now. Also, the whole plot revolves really heavily around wacky ideas about climate change, depending on where you're at on that. I think it's really silly. But even the remake of Lost in Space from the 90s did that. So it is a major setup. The climate change thing, there's some references to like the dangers of agriculture and how they're overcoming it, and sort of very much the Marxist climate thing. But there's never a time when anyone looks at the screen and yells at you. There's no weird speech making. In fact, it is written in a very classical sort of way that it's a real story with real people. And like The Expanse before it, you quickly forget. The Expanse is sort of my go-to recent years thing. Christiane Avasarala, older woman, grandmother figure, but she's an incredible character. They wrote her well, she was played well. Now, so far in Moonhaven, there's a lot of, it's heavy with female leadership, female protagonists, but at no point are you like, well, there's too many girls. At no point do you like, there's too many women. It's written in a way that nobody is pulling the She-Hulk. They're not looking at the screen and lecturing you about their treatment. And they shouldn't be. I mean, this is the future. If you're really intending for this to represent the future, then it should be representing the future that you're hoping for, or at least one possible thing to hope for, as bad as it can be with the climate stuff. You're hoping that people will pull together and find other alternatives. So you don't want it to be too contemporary, although, of course, that is what a lot of the woke crowd does. Moonhaven does a really good job so far. I've only watched the pilot. But so far, they've done a good job of capturing the weird hippie sort of theology or mythos of the people living on the moon, how that relates to the human future, what it is they're trying to accomplish. And it really draws you in, and it gives you enough of that really well done science fiction elements that you're like, I'm really interested where this is going to go. And it does check some of those contemporary boxes without screaming at you or lecturing you in that way that is so off-putting. It's much more in line, like The Expanse was, with more classic storytelling where you had an agenda. Every artist has an agenda. Every writer has an agenda. But your first motive was, how do I pull people in with a human story that's about humans? I always look at it when I've written stuff in the past. Can these people be interchanged? If they cannot be interchanged, then it doesn't work. So if you have a discussion between a mentor and a student and they're different genders, does it work if you reverse them? Can it work if you swap up? If it doesn't work without reversing them, then maybe your story is too specifically about something that people aren't going to relate to. You got to look at it. So far, at least, Moonhaven's done a great job of drawing you into this science fiction universe. It's piqued my interest. I kind of want to watch more. I have a lot on my list right now, and I may wait and see what other reviewers say on channels that I like about the people that will have watched more of it than me and get more insight into what's coming. But the pilot, really well done, really good work. It really pulls you in, and it really seems like an interesting universe.